Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today is Karith Foster, humorist, motivational speaker, TV and radio personality, actress, author, blogger, and entrepreneur are all the titles fitting for Karith Foster. She is one of the hottest comics to come out of New York City, according to both The Hollywood Reporter and the Backstage magazine, who named her one of the top 10 comics to watch. She has made a name for herself as the national headliner for being a clean, funny African-American comedian. Karith travels nationally and abroad, bringing her humor and inspiration to all of her audiences. To find out more about Karith and her corporate programs that she runs on diversity, visit Karith, KARITH.com. Hi, Karith. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
I am very well, Christina. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy to have you out here today. Actually, you're the first humorist comedian. No, actually, we did have another group that actually did humorous videos doing political topics using humor to try to get the message out. But you're the first comedian, actress, author, and entrepreneur all wrapped into one. And so I'm sure you have a very interesting story behind all that. Share with our audience a little bit how you came to doing all that you do today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of like the Heinz 57 of humorists. I have a very interesting background in that I actually began as a journalist. Like that's what I initially got my degree in at college, and my first job out of school was working for Barbara Walters. I was on the production staff of The View, but I always, since even younger than that, I had this burning desire to be this beacon of light and truth, and I always thought it was the news people who were able to do that. And then I got into news production, and I realized, well, you don't always get to tell the truth per se, and you have to pass things past the network and the sponsors. If they say there's no such thing as chance, but while I was at The View, I found my way into a comedy class, and I realized that was the channel, that was the vehicle for me to be able to still have fun, but educate people and get them to think and talk about subjects that might be uncomfortable, but using humor would make it a little bit easier an easier pill to swallow, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got my start, and that comedy career has been pretty amazing for me, and it's taken me, as I said, it's been a vehicle to a lot of opportunities, from radio and television opportunities and appearances to even having done warm up for Oprah Winfrey one time before her show. My biggest job, and that was probably in the most notable as far as of public attention, was when I joined the cast of Imus in the Morning after, I call it Nappygate, after the scandal with the Rutgers women's basketball team. And I was brought on, literally, to diversify the staff, quote unquote. And that was quite an experience. I call it my tale of two cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Because I think anytime you deal with an ego that large, you have to understand there are going to be some issues. But I was very proud to join the staff. I was very proud to have the opportunity to, again, follow my purpose, which was, this being this beacon of light and truth, and to be the anti-stereotype of African American that we typically see in the media. So that's why I jumped at the chance, because I remember thinking, if I don't do this, someone else might, and not be as responsible.
I love what you're hitting on there, that there's a way for you to be a beacon of truth, but not always sometimes following the path that other people are choosing before you. And what's really awesome about that is that you were talking about being in media and such, and you can't always be as out there up front as you might like. And I think that stays the same for when I even worked in corporate and I wasn't doing anything huge that would be in the eye of the public. But you couldn't always just go about doing the best changes you wanted to do because you're really stuck inside of a box.
Right. Right. So, there are these rules and guidelines and, you know, people don't want to offend other people and they want to be safe. And I appreciate that. I have worked in corporate America as well for almost a decade. I worked in human resources for Fortune 500 cosmetics company in New York City. So I saw cases a lot of times of people getting offended easily or, you know, not being able to say certain things. And that's what is very interesting about what I do now, which is I have a diversity program that uses humor that I take to corporations. I started off with colleges and universities, but I've even had people ask me if I could speak to high schools because there's such a need for it. So I can tailor it to cover all audiences, but being in front of the corporate audience has been primarily my focus these past several months. And what I'm appreciating is the fact that they're appreciating my approach, which is, you know, I do follow a specific decorum. I'm not offensive. I don't go in there to offend anyone. I go in there to be engaging, to make a point, to share, you know, personal stories also, you know, but to do it with humor so that what is an uncomfortable topic oftentimes, you know, such as diversity can be, is palpable. You know, it's almost like giving a dog, excuse the base reference, but, you know, giving a dog a pill with like peanut butter, you know?
Yeah. And I totally get that. That group who had come on, I totally had forgotten it. I thought at first when we first started this interview, oh yeah, you're the first comedian, but actually no, there was that group I told you about that would talk about political issues but using humor. And I thought, well, if that's not a difficult concept, I don't know what is. Anything of politics of any sort gets people revved up in millions of contorted, awful scenarios and your mama on this and screaming and hollering. So I think if anything, it's a great tool to open the conversation up for any difficult topic. How exactly do you use humor as a core part of your presentation to connect with people?
Well, I always talk about myself, and maybe that's an ego thing.
Well, you know yourself, eh?
I was just about to say, or maybe it's because I just know myself better than anyone else. You know, and I had a very interesting growing up experience. You know, I am African American. I know I may not sound like it. One of the funny things about that is I've done radio work before, and I've even done some, we'll call it acting for certain networks, and I've always been cast as the Caucasian Midwestern girl who's in her 20s and 30s, like always. And I think that's hysterical because, you know, that aside from the age factor, that couldn't be further from, you know, who I really am. I grew up in the South. I lived in New York for 15 years. But that's just, you know, how I sound. So it's interesting to talk about perception. As far as, you know, using humor, again, it goes back to making people comfortable. And my theory has always been this: if you can laugh at something, you can get through it. And there's so many hard things for people to discuss. There's so many things that make us uncomfortable, especially in this day and age where it seems like we're being divided more and more, you know, Republican, Democrat, Black, white, you know, Christian, atheist, homosexual. It's ridiculous. And it's laughable. Honestly, it's laughable because people are people and we all deserve love, respect, and acceptance. That doesn't mean you have to agree with what someone else is doing. Okay, they are entitled to do what they want to do, as you're entitled to your opinions as well. However, that does not mean you should not respect them as another human being.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because just yesterday there was this meme on Facebook and it showed a bunch of people on a assembly line kind of like being totaled through like and then there was a big F in the middle and you go through the F and you come out the other side, and as the people went through the F and came out the other side, and the F was standing for Facebook, they were looking like judges, you know, like an old time parliament with the wigs on and everything like that. And I said to my friend, what does that meme mean? And she said, well, you know, because people enter the Facebook world, they start posting all their opinions and their political beliefs and their whatever beliefs, and all of a sudden they become super judgmental because they've got that anonymity behind them where I can just say whatever I want and it's okay. But without realizing, and one of my friends actually said, you know, some of the people I know personally offline I would never want to friend had I met them online, whether it be because and it's given us a way to kind of diarrhea our ideas. But really, when you look at a lot of the core ideas, we all want the same thing. We want to be safe. We want to live a prosperous and happy life. At the core of it, we all want the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so funny. My husband calls Facebook fake book. And I'm like, that's so apropos.
What exactly, though, because you talked about diversity, and I had someone on that's going to come on into October talk about diversity, but she mentioned to us that in the corporate environment, often corporations will say, well, we want diversification, blah, blah, blah. And really, when you look at their people that they hire, they all look like the cookie cutter type of person. They might be different colors, they might be different cultures, but they all want them to act the same. So what does diversity mean for you, and how do you help corporations integrate that?
Absolutely. Well, and that's such a fantastic question, because, diversity, it's such a broad topic, and, many people think, oh, that just means different colors, as you said, but it also means different lifestyles. It means people who've come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And, typically, though, when you are speaking about a corporation, they are looking for people who will fit their mold so that they can get their job done. The idea behind diversity, and many companies who are involved in diversity supplier efforts, I applaud them, because the idea behind that is, hey, listen, let's give somebody who wouldn't normally fall under our umbrella of, what our quote-unquote norm is, an opportunity to create a business, whether it's a women-owned business or a minority-owned business. Let's give someone a chance to be part of, to be a cog in our system, because, hey, we may benefit more than we even thought, because there may be new ideas brought to the table because they aren't coming from the same place that we are. And so the idea behind diversity is broadening your horizons, literally, broadening your horizons to include others, to be accepting of others, to be open to new experiences that other people bring to the table.
I really like the point you're hitting there. Early back in my corporate years, I've always been a bit of a creative. I'm not really the accounting type, but that's what I did for 20 years in corporate America. And so it was, yeah, and it was very funny because people around me would often, some of my closest friends and coworkers at the time would say, you kind of look like Sting's sister, because I had spiky blonde hair and I wore like furry Cookie Monster sweaters and I didn't act the part of a corporate financial person. And they said, you don't belong here. You don't fit the part. And, now looking back, I think sometimes if corporations were to do just as you said, kind of maybe bring maybe creative mind into the SEC, whatever department you have that you want to, make change in, that actually could help. Bringing a little creativity might help in your finance department or in your legal department to not all keep it, cookie cutter, as you said before.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the point, and that's exactly the idea behind it. And I think, what leads everybody astray in every realm, politically, dealing with issues of racism, is fear. And if you can erase the fear, if you can eliminate the fear, if you can understand that the fear is unfounded, and having someone different be a part of, your projects, your association, then you open yourself up to a world of possibilities.
Yeah, I like that, because also I think a lot of times you were mentioning media in the beginning, and I think that it's not always done on purpose, but I think sometimes to maybe get more ratings or whatever, they kind of hype things up, get it exciting, and polarize a particular topic, like this happened and black man killed white person or something like that. And then it gets inside the heads of the listeners, and then they think, okay, crimes are committed more by black people than white people or something like that. And then it becomes, we get that polarization between white and black and women and men.
Exactly.
And so what's really awesome is if we start listening to whatever we listen to, whether it be a conversation on the street, on Facebook, or even the news, and start to say, okay, let me look at this from a different perspective, instead of thinking of whatever I'm watching as a polarization thing. Let me just see all aspects of it. Maybe do a little digging myself to look further into what happened in a particular subject if I'm interested in it.
And that's exactly what I do with my program called Stereotypes 101. It's actually a 3-part program that visits people analyzing why they stereotype, where they're coming from, and how to keep from using stereotypes to their own detriment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you've come to creating your own journey here, because now you've created your own niche that is helping people and corporations broaden their view using humor and teaching about diversity. What has been some of your greatest challenges or hurdles as you've gone along your journey, and how did you overcome them?
Wow. Well, you mean my personal journey as in dealing with diversity?
And a personal journey and just building your business, because you do have a unique...
Right. Well, what's interesting is, as far as building the business, it's funny, so apropos that we're speaking today, I just spoke to a booking agent of mine, and I was like, so, what's going on? Do you have some things in the hopper for me? And he said, actually, I had a comedy club in Florida that was interested in you and I'm like, until what? He goes, until they went to your website and saw that you were, as they put it, non-white. And I was initially I was mad, and crushed. And then I was like, that's their loss. And I have to take the high road with that, because otherwise it would just eat me up. That in 2015, 2016, we are still dealing with that kind of ignorance and absurdity. So there's obviously a need for diversity programming. I think a lot of people tend to be burnt out on it, though. They do turn on TV. They're like, oh, look, there's a black character on that show. We don't need more diversity. But again, they're missing the point of actually not just having a visual aspect, but actually truly knowing someone who is different, having a relationship involvement, be it personal or work. So, a lot of people hear the term, diversity training, and they roll their eyes. And so a lot of the corporations I'm working with actually, they almost don't even want to call it diversity training. And we're trying to come up with something else that makes it easier to swallow, because there are people who either think, oh, I've got, my friends look like the colors of Benetton. I'm good. But like you said, they're all still the same. They may be different hues, but it's still the same type of group of people. So they're not really, truly in a diversified environment. Environment. Exactly. As far as personally, one of the greatest challenges I've faced was, and I developed a program actually about it, a speaking program called You Are Enough. And the idea behind You Are Enough is that when we are small, we are told, usually as a caution, that, oh, you're not big enough to cross the street by yourself, right? You're not old enough to stay home by yourself. Well, that warning somehow becomes internalized, and it becomes a negative voice that we ourselves are in charge of. Like, oh, I'm not pretty enough to, try out for, I'm not smart enough to apply to law school. I'm not enough. The interesting thing for me as my enough was something that was echoed and has been my entire life and still is, that I'm not black enough, which has always been confounding for me because, I look in the mirror, I see who I am, and I am a proud black woman. But because I may not sound a certain way or carry myself in the demeanor that is based on the stereotype, I've been told this by both black people and white people. I've not gotten jobs in entertainment because of it. But I've refused to kowtow to the people who don't seem to understand that this is who I am. So my challenge has been to be okay with me. And that's what I want to convey to other people. Whatever your circumstances, you are you. And if someone else doesn't get it, that's their problem.
I love that you're mentioning that, because like I was mentioning me back in corporate looking as a rock singer, part-time rock singer by day, accountant. Really, I don't think any of that really matters to what you bring to the table as a human being. And I think for people to say, well, because you don't talk and look, or speak the way they think someone should if they're black, it's absurd. And a good friend of mine is a pilot, and he said, when I first started out studying to become a pilot, I grew up in the hood of New York, and I'm like, yo, that man, and he would speak really kind of hood, and he realized he wasn't fitting into the environment. So he started to actually fix his lingo and speak like a kind of, how should you say it, like an American accent that really doesn't have any particular home. It's like
Right.
Because he wanted to fit into the career he wanted to go into. And now looking back, he said a lot of people in his now neighborhood are like, well, you gave up on us. You left your neighborhood.
Right.
And he's like, no, I didn't. What my greatest passion was to fly airplanes. And in order to fly airplanes, I had to get rid of, the hood accent. But it doesn't mean I'm less who I am today just because I decided to become a pilot. A pilot, he wanted to fly, he said, when he was practically in his mother's womb. He looked up and said, hey, I want to do that thing. But it would be awesome if all businesses and all people could realize that, you don't have to fit in a cookie cutter or whatever, no matter what color, race, or whatever you are, woman or man.
I can't tell you how many people will come up to me after, a performance or presentation and be like, you are really funny for a girl. And it's like this crazy backhanded compliment where they're trying to be nice, but you're like, are you serious?
I didn't know girls couldn't be funny.
Right? Oh, it's crazy. It kills me. But you know what? But that's why I have a mission. That's why I will never stop doing what I'm doing, because it's not just my passion, but it is my job to literally speak to people, to get people, even if it's one person in a room full of 200 that has a slight mind shift, to think, oh my gosh, you know what? I was thinking this my whole life, and I didn't even realize that might be where someone else is coming from. And it goes both ways. It goes for everyone. And I like to, what I say is I want to get everyone to care, right? And that is use conscious empathy, right? Actively listen, respond responsibly, and be aware, aware of their environment. So, it's not that hard. This is not rocket science, It's just being a decent human being to one another.
Yeah. And Karith, why do you think so many we've become so polarized? I know I mentioned before that sometimes the news programs can kind of drum up excitement and sensationalism on a topic, but is there more that people have become just disconnected, and just what is it that's caused empathy to be less prominent in our culture?
Again, I think it goes back to fear, and that fear is fed through the media. It's fed through, our families. It's fed by people who feel threatened. So they, pass along that fear to their peers, their family, their children. In my presentation, I discuss the three main reasons why people stereotype. And the first is that it's natural. Have you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink? He talks about how, it is human nature. It is part of our survival instinct, really, to assess a situation and an environment and a person within the first few seconds of meeting them, to see whether or not this is a safe place or we are in danger. That just goes back to when we were cave people. Another reason that we stereotype is because we've been taught, whether it's been conscious teaching or subconscious, just like which is what the media, I think, plays into. When we see these stories on the news or we watch, movies and, all the movies, the terrorists are they're Muslim and they're from, the Middle East. What does that feed our brains?
Yeah. And I would hope that everyone listening, just like when I've had other people on who've talked about social issues, my number one thing is never take what our guests say or I say verbatim. Go research for yourself. Anything you feel passionate about or you hear that stirs your pot, just research it a bit yourself and find out deeper into it, what is making you riled up or inciting you, so that you can come at it with passion and compassion. And you mentioned something interesting about the brain, I think, because you had said that we make an assessment on what's going on and a judgment. And I think you're right in that part of it is our, back for prehistoric times, you had to make an assessment. Is this a dangerous situation, period? Is this animal in front of me dangerous? Is this plant I'm trying to eat dangerous? And use all of your senses to come to a quick decision so that you don't die. But now I often see that it seems to me that a lot of the critical thinking factors have been thrown out the window, and people just kind of take, okay, this is what I think. And when I say, well, why do you think that way? And they're like, well, I just do. And they don't really have a reason why.
Well, there's no question our brains have changed. I was speaking to someone the other day. I'd watched the news, which I try to avoid. I'll read papers and go online, but I really try not to watch the news because it's just so pathetic with the fear mongering and the just god awful stories. But there was a story, and this was on the Honest to God Nightly News, that goldfish now have a longer attention span than a lot of humans.
Oh, no. That's horrible.
Yes. So because of, the way we operate today with Facebook and Instagram and Vine and, all these things that have added something to our culture, but it's also taken away some things. And I think that's part of why, again, you were asking, what has changed in society? Are people more aggressive? Are they not? I definitely think people might be lazier, so they don't take the time to do the research or to educate themselves or learn about things. They just kind of take something at face value really quickly and don't investigate further.
Yeah, I really hope with this conversation and listening to you that they will broaden their horizons on all topics so that we can have a happier and more congruent community that grows. Now, also, what has been like the greatest lesson you've learned through all of growing your business and through your personal journey?
Probably the greatest lesson I've learned is that anything is possible. Having a dream, having a purpose, it's entirely possible. And there may be obstacles that come your way. There may be things that you're like, oh my God, why did you put this in front of me? Why did you put me in this position? Why did you have me work with this person? And it seems at the time like it's the worst thing that could be. But again, it's that old adage, if something doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. I certainly would not be in the position I'm in had I not gone through certain hardships as a child, as an adolescent, and as an adult, in certain work environments. It's been something that has molded me and I believe strengthened me to have the fortitude to do what I'm doing, to help other people see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that they are entitled to respect, that they are worthy of it, and that, it is entirely possible for us to have a cohesive environment where people interact on a social and professional basis without too much negativity.
Yeah. Well, I want everyone to find out more about you and find out more about working. If there's a corporation or business out there that wants to participate in one of your programs, how can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, which I try to keep it simple, y'all. It's just my name, which is Karith.com. So that's KARITH.com. I am also on LinkedIn, Karith Foster, and Twitter. Although I need to start tweeting more. Apparently, I'm not tweeting enough.
Me either.
And Facebook, but most definitely, Karith.com. You can also email me there, fill out a contact information if you're interested. I'll have my booking liaison get in touch with you, or I may even personally, write back. But I love what I do, and I would very much love to bring my message and my programs to corporations and schools across the nation.
It's been so fascinating having you out here today, sharing your wisdom and gifts with our audience. Thank you so much. Before we head on out, do you have any parting word you'd like to leave with our audience?
Oh my gosh, you know what? Just live, laugh, and love. That's it. I know that sounds so hippie and esoteric.
No, I love it.
Let's do it, right?
That's right. We only have one life. Let's live it to the grandest and to the most positive, and let it be glorious for everyone. Well, I want to thank you again, Karith, for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Thank you.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.